Labor is on the march, and it's being driven by our insatiable desire for snacks. That's right. Because of the pandemic, Americans are eating more snacks than ever before.
With Americans stuck at home, snack food has become a valuable commodity for the pandemic-stressed consumer. Frito-Lay, a subsidiary of PepsiCo and one of the largest snack food makers, has seen sales surge. The company produces over 1,200 different snacks, including brands like Cheetos, Doritos, Lay's, Smart Food, and Ruffles. In early 2021, Frito-Lay North America announced 2020 fourth quarter net revenue of $5.4 billion, a 5% increase from a year earlier.
From a product perspective, variety seems to be very important. People are seeking more snacks. They're snacking 40% more right now than pre-pandemic.
The snacking industry, was kind of growing low to mid single digits, humming right along. And then the pandemic just gave it this explosive growth with the stay-at-home trends.
And it's not just Frito-Lay that is seeing a boom in its snack business. North American sales of savory snacks like chips, popcorn, and pretzels climbed to $56.9 billion in 2020, 11% more than 2019. In stressful times, people turn to snacking for comfort, and COVID-19 has transformed kitchens across the U.S. into giant vending machines.
I didn't think Americans could snack even more, but we're snacking even more. We love our snacks, people. We simply cannot get enough of the snacks. And you know which one is the king of all the snacks? Well, it's America's favorite cookie, the Oreo cookie.
Oh, 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 who's that kid with the Oreo cookie? Licking up the creamy middle like she did when she was little. It's hard to hide the kid inside when you're crunching Oreo.
Now, folks, I love a good Oreo cookie, and let me be perfectly clear. I love the classic Oreo cookie. None of this double stuff nonsense, or worse, the cherry cola flavored Oreos. Ugh. But the twin effects of the increased snack consumption and labor shortage driven by the pandemic have made it so that the bosses over at Nabisco, the company that makes Oreos, put the squeeze on their workers. And on August 10th, workers in the Portland, Oregon factory went on strike.
Workers at the Nabisco bakery in Northeast Portland held a rally today to support their strike against the company. Baker workers walked off the job on Tuesday, demanding a fair contract. Today, they were joined by members of the AFL-CIO and other union groups. The workers are asking for a better contract amid fears of jobs being moved out of the country.
Some of the things that would drastically change everybody's lives here, they've done so by closing plants across the nation already, U.S. bakeries that are represented by the BCT GM union workers. They recently closed down Atlanta, Georgia, also Fair Lawn in New Jersey, and there's always the constant threat of us being next.
That's right. The Nabisco workers have gone on strike. And since the initial work stoppage in Portland, the strike has spread to Aurora, Colorado, Richmond, Virginia, and Chicago, Illinois, where Nabisco's parent company, Mondelez, is headquartered. And according to a report by Alex Press in Jacobin, Nabisco workers have been working 12 to 16-hour shifts, with some working 7 days a week. The workers say the company is pushing for an alternative work week. That's a fun name. A concession that would take away overtime pay for Saturdays and Sundays, with time paid at regular rates until a worker hits 40 hours. Regardless of the shift's length or the day of the week, one worker told Huffington Post that the changes could amount to a loss of $10,000 a year for some workers. Nabisco is also pushing for a two-tier health care plan, which would slot newer workers into a higher cost deal while also serving to divide the workers within the union. And all of this is coming in the midst of eye-popping profits for Mondelez International, Nabisco's parent company. According to Market Watch, Mondelez International said profit nearly doubled, and revenue increased in the latest quarter as homebound consumers continued to spend on cookies and snacks. The Chicago-based maker of Oreos and Triscuits said profit was $1.08 billion in the second quarter, compared with $545 million a year earlier. $1 billion in profit in one quarter, selling cookies and Triscuit crackers. And Mondelez CEO, a guy named Dirk van Put, has spoken about how, in order to get the younger generations to nibble on his delicious snacks, he wants his brands to mean something, man, and to make strides in things like corporate social responsibility and environmental sustainability.
In our office, when we have Oreos, okay, my generation just loves Oreo. That's all we know. You've got many different iterations of Oreo that I would have found as almost sacrilege, but the younger people love.
Yes, they do, and I think it has to see with where younger people are looking for what's important to them and what a brand stands for, what it does for the community, what it does for sustainability, and so on. Those are things that are really important for them. And as brands, you need to make sure that that is there. And so that's why we did something like Snacking Made Right. We want to show that as a company, more than ever, what we do in ESG is important, and that we want to do the right thing, especially in these circumstances.
You know, that the Bo Burnham joke about bagel bites was truer to life than I realized. Now, in that clip, the CEO of Mondelez, that guy Dirk Van Put, who kind of looks like Darth Vader once he took his helmet off, mentioned Mondelez initiative called Snacking Made Right, which is their push for corporate social responsibility so that millennials and Gen Zers can feel good about themselves when stuffing their face with Oreos and Nilla wafers. Well, I looked up the Snacking Made Right initiative on Mondelez's website, and it's your usual inane pablum about achieving sustainability or whatever. But one thing caught my eye. One of the goals of Snacking Made Right is that by 2025, in 4 years, they hope to achieve, among other things, quote, 100% adoption of child labor due diligence across cocoa life communities in West Africa. I mean, that would imply that today, in 2021, they can't say for certain whether the chocolate you eat in a Toblerone came from child labor. Isn't that nice? And Snacking Made Right certainly doesn't say anything about treating the workers here in the United States with any sort of humanity. Vice spoke to a striking Nabisco worker in Richmond, Virginia, and he said, quote, basically, the main thing we're trying to get is a fair contract. During the pandemic, we came in 7 days a week. Some people worked every day, 16 hours a day for 3 months. Nathan Williams, an oiler who has worked at the Nabisco plant in Richmond, Virginia for more than 30 years, told Motherboard. Williams said that his facility had pushed extra hours onto workers instead of hiring new workers. For them, it's all about finding the cheapest way to make cookies. And what's happening in the Nabisco plants is a trend across the United States during the pandemic. According to Alex Press, quote, the Nabisco strike is another example of a dynamic spreading across the industries in the United States. As employers scramble to staff up, many currently employed workers are subjected to mandatory overtime, with bosses seeking to work them to the bone rather than recruit more people, a potentially costly move when workers are hard to find. In response, some workers are using their increased leverage during a period of employer panic over the tight labor market to push back, demanding better wages and working conditions. And much of the time, those demands are about hours and scheduling. And despite Nabisco's record profits, it has been shutting down plants here in the United States, often moving production out to Mexico.
The iconic sign on the top of the Nabisco plant is starting to show its age as the countdown to the plant's shutdown is moving closer to the end.
It's a sad moment, and my fellow employees feel the same way, and I wish they didn't do this.
Melinda's parents moved from New York to work in the Fair Lawn plant in 1958. She followed their tradition for 27 and a half years, and after all that work and dedication, her daily commitment is coming to an end.
I got to move on. I have to find another job. It's a good paying job, and a lot of people are going to lose a lot of good paying jobs. It's unfortunate.
Some 600 people are losing their jobs. Most of those positions are moving to a plant in Virginia. But many believe the parent company wants to move the cookie plant out of the country.
The threat of moving the cookie plant out of the country, of moving production, is one of the biggest obstacles to labor militancy. Here's Alex Press again. Outsourcing is a long-standing concern as Nabisco continues to close operations in the United States while building up plants in Mexico. In 2015, the company told workers at its Chicago factory to accept a 60% pay cut in pay and benefits, or it would lay them off and focus on a newly established operation in Salinas, Mexico. The workers refused the obscene concession, despite receiving rhetorical support from both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton during the 2016 presidential campaign. On the campaign trail in New Hampshire, Trump said, quote, I'm not eating Oreos anymore.
Wait a minute, wait. Do you like Oreos? The cookies, right? I'm not eating Oreos anymore. Nabisco is closing their plant, a big plant in Chicago, and they're moving it to Mexico. Ford is building a $2.5 billion plant in Mexico. Mexico's doing very well. We love Mexico, but they're doing very well. We need leaders that can deal with them and deal with all the other countries.
Well, you'd be surprised that after that wonderful oration and him winning the election, he failed to force Nabisco to reverse its decision. Some 600 workers lost their jobs. And shortly after opening its Salinas plant in 2014, Nabisco signed a union contract that capped the top pay rate at 200 pesos, or about $14.90 per day. So think about that. Nabisco, who has to pay American workers about $14, $15, or maybe $20 an hour, can simply move production to Mexico, where they can pay workers $14.90 per day. And worst of all, perhaps, is that they're depriving the good people of New Jersey of that delicious cookie smell.
One other thing that will disappear is the delightful smell of baking cookies, which tickled the palate and senses with a delicious aroma.
If the breeze is right, you smell that nice smell.
Will you miss that?
Yeah, that was nice.
That was nice. Now, the labor action at Nabisco has become part of a trend. Just last month, workers at Frito-Lay factories, who were also being ground to dust to feed our insatiable desire for delicious snacks, went on strike as well.
The company says, we're shocked they went on strike. How are you shocked? Did you think that we would go to 90 hours before we would hit the streets? Forced overtime causes divorces. It caused people to kill themselves that used to work here. Okay, there have been several employees that have killed themselves, okay, that have worked here over the years. Okay, this is a continual thing. It destroys marriages. It destroys families.
We have to do something with the suicide shifts, because to work 12 hours and be off 8 and work 12 hours, you got time, travel time and everything. I said that's a safety risk.
Imagine being an employee in here that has not had a day off for 5 months. That is the reality of what you're seeing. That is the reality of why you're really seeing the picket over here.
4 or 5 years ago, we had a guy, and man, he was working all the time, and he stopped off at a rest stop on I-70, and he fell asleep, and he didn't wake up.
Company wants to call it a squeeze shift. It's nothing squeezing about it. It's suicide.
The point system is used to fire people.
We're getting penalized for taking time off.
I've had to cancel so many doctor appointments, dentist appointments that I could not make them because of the forced overtime. Walking out the plant last second, hey, you're forced over. Things need to change. This is not a way you treat people.
Suicide shifts. I can't get over that. And one worker who suffered an electric shock at the factory and then was injured was then put under corporate surveillance by Frito-Lay.
After leaving the Navy, Brendan Ingram moved home to St. Louis for a job offer he thought would set him up for long-term success.
I guess Frito-Lay, who wouldn't want to work for Frito-Lay?
In an effort to move up within the company, Ingram says he was working 60, 70, sometimes 80 hours per week at this Frito-Lay warehouse. But October 2nd of 2016, an incident occurred that changed both his personal and professional life forever.
I went a little dizzy for a moment. I was like, I'm okay. I think I just got zapped a little bit.
Realizing he had been electrocuted, a manager took him to the hospital.
They was just like, oh, you're good to go.
However, it didn't take him long to realize there was something seriously wrong.
I am in pain every day. It's excruciating.
Diagnosed with 2 herniated discs and liver disease, he was put on disability.
I went from making a nice amount to support my family to barely making it.
We had to use everything thus far because Frito-Lay and Pepsi have not helped us.
They filed suit and got these videos showing private investigators following them.
We actually try to stay in the house with the curtains closed because we're being watched so hard.
People shouldn't be treated like this.
It really was driving me to where I feel like I needed help.
As a last-ditch effort, they turned to GoFundMe.
This was our last hope.
In 4 days, that account has raised more than $85,000.
I'm very, very grateful. I don't have words. I don't know what to say, but thank you.
I can't even fathom the words, to be honest.
I have a glimmer of hope. Like, I never thought that people would care this much.
So after 17 days on strike, a deal was struck between management at Frito-Lay and the union.
Well, after 17 days on the picket line, union leaders have come to a tentative agreement with Frito-Lay. We start tonight with this developing story. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brooke Lennington.
And I'm Molly Pat. We were first to let you know about the chance of a deal right here on KSNT News earlier tonight. Now our Cassie Nichols joins us live to break down what exactly is in that tentative agreement. Cassie, what's the next step in the process?
Molly, members of the union will now vote this Friday on whether or not they agree on new contract terms. The new terms took 3 days of continuous conversations between union leaders and Frito-Lay officials. I spoke with the international union leader tonight. He told me some of the details in the new possible agreement. He says it will address most of the concerns that led to union workers going on strike earlier this month, just after the 4th of July. Concerns like better pay and overtime are addressed in this new contract. But now it's up to the members of the local union to vote on if they agree with the new tentative contract as well.
The union members did end up voting to ratify the new contract, and among the terms won were a 4% increase in pay over 2 years, as well as an end to the so-called suicide shifts. And what we're seeing here is politics boiled down to its essence. You know, cable news yaps all day about bullshit, and on Twitter we fight all day about bullshit, and at the end of the day, the stuff that really matters is who gets what in the society. And the society happens to be divided between those that own things, i.e. the capitalists or the bourgeoisie or whatever you want to call them, the Dirk Van Putts of the world, and those of us who have to sell our labor to a capitalist in exchange for a wage. The economy produces stuff, and then the fight between capital and labor is basically the fight that decides what share of the pie goes to which side. And in the case of Nabisco, the bosses thought that they could take a few extra cookies from the proverbial cookie jar. They saw record profits, and instead of sharing it with their workers, they wanted to pay themselves in the form of dividends. The workers, meanwhile, were getting squeezed. And the only recourse they had is to use their collective power and strike. In order to coordinate their collective efforts, they needed a union. That's it. That's what it really boils down to. Everything else flows from that. And it was good to see good friend of the show, Danny DeVito, support the strike. He tweeted out, "Support Nabisco workers striking for humane working hours, fair pay, outsourcing jobs. No contracts, no snacks." Well, hours later, Twitter, and I can't believe I'm saying this, unverified Danny DeVito. They literally thought, hey, it's Danny DeVito, legendary actor from Taxi, LA Confidential, Get Shorty, and Always Sunny. Let's remove his Twitter verification for supporting a labor strike. Well, hours after a major public outroar, Twitter re-verified Danny DeVito. Thank you. And now we can all support the Nabisco strike, which is spreading like a nice Oreo filling. Hopefully, one of the demands is no more novelty Oreo cookie flavors. Like no to carrot cake Oreos, no to caramel coconut Oreos, no to hot and spicy cinnamon Oreos, and by God, no to kettle corn Oreos. Yes, they have popcorn flavored Oreos, and that's wrong.
It's just so unnecessary. But you know, I've never tried the cherry cola Oreo, so I feel like maybe I can't be closed-minded until I try, Nando.
You're a good person. I'm like a Taliban fundamentalist when it comes to Oreos.
No,
only the original.
I actually 100% agree with you. I don't even like double stuffed Oreos. You're an American hero for saying that.
Thank you.
No, but this is such a great segment. I did not know that Danny DeVito had been unverified as a result of showing solidarity to the striking workers. It's just so sick.
So gross.
And by the way, I just got word that our very own Cale Brooks also dislikes the double stuffed Oreos.
Breaking news.
Breaking news. But to get to, my serious thoughts on this story, I think the heart, like your main thesis here is correct, right? If you have a union backing you, if you have the protection necessary to strike, you're able to essentially go against your employer and demand better. And those suicide shifts are obviously untenable. People can't work like that. I think it's a very intentional strategy to pit workers against one another by ensuring that the new hires don't receive the same healthcare benefits as the workers who had been there already. It's just a way to sow discontent and conflict among workers, and they love that. So I love that they're showing solidarity with new hires and fighting together for better working conditions and better pay. And then finally, I'm glad that you included the video of the man who had been electrocuted on the job, because it shows you that, it's a theme that applies to so many different topics that we discuss on this show. When there are profit motives at play, those profit motives will always take priority over the health, safety, and lives of the workers. The workers are there to be essentially for the capitalists to extract as much labor as humanly possible, right? Spend as little money on the workers to increase the profits. And that, again, is the fiduciary responsibility of the company to the shareholders. This is not an accident. This is how the system is built.
Yeah. I think that one of the things to watch as we emerge from the pandemic is that the pandemic may have changed some of the labor outlook for a lot of people in the United States, working from home or staying home for a while, receiving pretty generous government benefits in the context of the United States. This labor shortage that people are talking about, it may cause a change in the declining militancy of labor that we've seen, that has been steady, for decades. I'm not going to I don't want to predict the future, and I don't want to get overly optimistic, but at some point that trend has to change. It has to start going back up. Like, labor militancy will eventually, take back up, and maybe this pandemic was the inflection point, because we are seeing more and more militancy from labor. I mean, they still haven't achieved huge gains. It's not like how it was in the 1930s, but they're the seeds of something there. So that's a story we'll be watching for sure. If you enjoyed this clip from Jacobin Weekends, please hit like and subscribe. You can also watch the full episode or catch any future live stream by clicking the join button below and becoming a Jacobin YouTube member. Thank you.